It is September 25th, 2024, and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant is teasing the possibility of a ground invasion of Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah, as we've seen Israel ramp up its targeting of not just Hezbollah, but of Lebanese civilians over the last 2 weeks, with a series of terror attacks, followed by a bombing spree this week that resulted in Lebanon's deadliest day in decades. Israel killed over 500 people. Lebanon's health minister said that the overwhelming majority of them were civilians. And yet, that puts us in this place where we're looking around at the international community, wondering why they're not doing more to try to stop Israel. The US certainly isn't doing anything whatsoever to rein in its ally, continuing to be complicit in every single war crime that Israel carries out. So, where are these latest escalations headed? Are we already seeing the start of a full scale war? We got into all of the latest with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Dr. Ramzy Baroud, a Palestinian-American journalist, author, and editor of the Palestine Chronicle. Dr. Baroud, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
Now, I want to get your take on the latest here. I know that Israel has carried out a string of unprecedented terror attacks in Lebanon last week. It then carried out a massive bombing spree across the country this week that killed over 500 people, Lebanon's deadliest day in decades. And yet, the U.S. refuses to condemn any of it. How do you view Israel's role in the current escalating tensions? And do you expect these escalations to continue?
Right. I think we need to start with kind of defining certain things here. Because I feel like many of us are making the mistake of expecting some sort of a balanced American position, neutral American position, as if the United States and Israel behave as if two separate entities. This has always proven to be wrong, yet somehow, maybe because we are driven by some hope that there will be a degree of sanity in Washington, that maybe there will be some sort of pressure coming from people operating outside the current ruling class that is making the decisions regarding Gaza, regarding Lebanon, regarding Israel. You know, the Blinkens and Sullivans and these guys. In actuality, I think the United States and Israeli position not only is very well coordinated, is essentially the same. If there is any difference, it would be that maybe the Americans are a little bit more leaning more towards the position of the Israeli opposition. They are more maybe Lapid, Gantz as opposed to Netanyahu, but they have to play the Netanyahu game because, from a domestic political point of view, they feel that they can't afford defying Netanyahu openly, or God forbid, holding the murder weapons. And I'm talking about, you know, tens of billions at this point of American weapon supplies and munitions to Israel that allowed it to carry out the genocide. If the Americans did not give this much weapons to Israel, logistical support, satellite support, communication of all kinds, political cover, intimidating others to not speak out, and so forth and so on. If that would have happened, Israel would have ran out of so much, including weapons in Gaza, within the period of 3 months, right? Because within that period, that's when the Israelis were screaming, "We need more weapons. We need more. We are running out of certain kind of munitions, and so forth and so on." Even when the Israelis tried to invade Rafah after they ran out of all options in Gaza, that's when the Americans, the Biden administration, came and acted as if, you know what? For the first time since the start of this war, I'm going to put my foot down. No specific kind of weapons in Rafah if you intend to invade. And a few weeks later, by the way, it's okay that you have invaded. Let's just pretend that the whole thing never happened. And here's more weapons. And here's a little bit more, and so forth and so on. And every single time we get engaged in these conversations as if the Americans had nothing to do with it and they have been pushed because of political circumstances, domestic considerations, pressures, manipulations of the Israeli lobby, and that sort of thing. No, this is an Israeli war as much as it is an American war. Now, what is happening in Lebanon is a repeat of the same futile exercise that Israel has carried out in Gaza, to a complete failure, by the way. Complete failure. Israel is in control of about 26% of the total size of Gaza, basically border regions, pushing the whole population into very small spaces. About 10% of Gaza, they are calling it, safe zones, in which they are not really safe. And they are playing this demographic game. Let's push the north to the south to the center back to the south. And they can't get anything out of it. So they decide, instead of ending the war as any rational human being, even if it's a military brute, like the likes of Yoav Galan, the Israeli defense minister, decide, this is not going anywhere. We need to bring this war to an end. No, let's go to another war in Lebanon. But here is the difference. The Lebanese border, I don't know, it's about 180 kilometer wide with Israel and a depth of about 50 kilometers. I mean, how many Gaza can you fit within South Lebanon alone? And this is, unlike Gaza, it's not a flat area. It's a mountainous area that Lebanese get lost in South Lebanon. I've been to South Lebanon and I have seen the Bekaa Valley, and it was terrifying for me to go for a simple hike because I was always worried about not being able to find my place back to the hotel. The Israeli army that is exhausted, in tatters, demoralized, unable to win in a tiny little Gaza against a group of people who are completely isolated from the world, making their own weapons underground. They are going to win against Hezbollah, that is considered the most powerful militia in the world, and it has more missiles than the vast majority of countries on earth, and they have a supply chain that connects them to Iran through Syria and through other means. Of course, this is not going to happen, but it is a sign of Israeli desperation and a sign of just again, the madness of the Israeli wars on Gaza and elsewhere. The Americans are doing the same thing. They're saying, let's bring this to an end. We are willing to negotiate. Let's talk, but after all, this is an Israeli war of defense. Israel is in a state of defending itself, killing and wounding thousands of Lebanese within a day. And yet, somehow, Israel has the right to defend itself. Expect nothing from the Americans, but expect that the Israelis are digging even a bigger hole in which they will never be able to escape without reaching a ceasefire deal in Gaza, therefore ending the war at all fronts.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a great point. I'm glad that you bring up a lot of times we talk about the US enabling Israel, but it's like, no, they're right there with them, right? They're exactly as involved in this. They hold all of the power to stop Israel. They don't use it. Therefore, their complicity is exactly as if the US was there carrying out these war crimes. And when you look at Hezbollah, exactly as you were saying, they've been very clear. They're like, hey, do you want these border clashes to stop? Okay, well, then stop committing a genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. It's very simple. But as long as you are continuing on with that bombardment and that blockade and you're, killing dozens of Palestinians on a daily basis, then you can guarantee that you're not going to have a day of rest in the north. You're going to continue to meet this resistance. And when it comes to Hezbollah, I know that they have increased their targeting of northern Israel with missiles. And when you look at statements like the one coming from Hezbollah chief Syed Hassan Nasrallah saying that Israel has crossed all red lines, or from the group's deputy leader calling this an open-ended battle against Israel, do you think that the war has already started? And how do you see Hezbollah's point in this? As you were noting, they've been preparing for this for a long time. I mean, is Israel really stupid enough to fall into the trap of launching a ground invasion and then seeing how well that goes for them?
Absolutely. So Israel, yeah, Israel is stupid enough, not because Israel is stupid, but because the circumstances or the options and the tools within Israel's disposal are very, very limited. It's like you walk into a minefield, knowing in advance that it's a minefield. You would say, but it's stupid. Well, in their viewpoint, they feel like they have no other option. Because, for example, they walked into Gaza knowing fully that there would be no victory of Gaza. I mean, I've said it on your show repeatedly from the very start. There will be no, and I am not the world top military analyst and I have no military background, but there are certain obvious evidence, understanding of history, understanding of the the nature of the Palestinian resistance, preparedness, evolution, and more important, the new nature of Arab unity. I mean, this is something that is going to be for the history book. History is not going to remember the likes of Bing Veer and Smotrich and these odd characters. History is going to remember the big picture. And the big picture is that this is the first time since the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916, when the French and the British and others came and divided the largesse of the Ottoman Empire, in which we actually see an Arab political or body politic that is behaving strategically, that is coordinating, and that is bringing all the fronts together with a single unified aim, and that is stopping the genocide in Gaza. So you know for a fact that since this, what they call the unity of the squares, has already been initiated and applied, no one is going to pull out now. So Gaza will not be left alone. We knew that from the very beginning. So we know that Israel is incapable of winning wars of attrition. They've tried it in the past and they miserably failed. We know that when someone drag you to his own war, this is not a war you want to fight. You only fight wars on your own terms, not wars that you are being pushed into. And that's exactly what happened. So that's back to my point, is that Israel is, whether Israel is stupid or not, they walked into this knowing exactly why they have been dragged into this. But they knew that if they don't, that's going to be the end of Israel as an idea. A lot of people are talking about the collapse of Israel and all of that. But entities exist as an idea and they die as ideas. Israel, the Israeli idea, okay, or the idea of Israel, is the fact that Israel is powerful militarily. Israel is superior in all, in terms of intelligence, in terms of economy, in terms of political clout, in all of that. And it has such superior edge over its enemies that no one even gets the chance to even blemish that Israeli image. October 7 did, and everything that has happened since October 7 has accentuated that image. So now they walk into Lebanon again, knowing exactly that they are walking into a trap. But they feel that if they lose now, it is, the idea is over. It's completely over. So what Israel does, they kill civilians. I always argue killing civilians is very painful, especially for those who lost loved ones, relatives, friends, and neighbors who are civilians. But it's also a sign of desperation, a sign of failure. If you are able to defeat an army, if you are able to defeat a military without having to kill civilians, why don't you go ahead and do it? They can't do it because they don't know how to do it and they won't be able to figure it out. But this is what Hezbollah is doing. The Hezbollah strategy, which by the way is frustrating a lot of Arabs as well, who are, where are the hypersonics? Where are the long range missiles? Do this. They bombed, South Lebanon, Saida, Beirut. Why don't you bomb Tel Aviv? And they killed our civilians. Why don't you retaliate? But Hezbollah doesn't do that. And the reason they haven't done that, Rachel, is because this means walking into the Israeli trap, meaning that you kind of reverse the scenario. And instead of Israel being dragged into a war that cannot win, why doesn't Israel escalate and raise the stakes so much to the point that Hezbollah can only do what Israel wants them to do, which is reacting exactly and precisely the way that Netanyahu wants them to react, with the hope of reaching that regional war, right? So Hezbollah is aware of the strategic objective of Netanyahu. And by the way, Israel, the way that Israel behaves, they behave according to very mathematical, very clear mathematical equations. They study, and we have seen that, we've studied the way that they study the Arabs, that they kind of look at all possibilities. If we do this, Hezbollah can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, and we have to draw the kind of political and strategic plans to accommodate any possible response. So Hezbollah is trying to operate completely outside the Israeli pattern that is clear to everyone. So by trying to bomb the Mossad headquarters, who in the history of this conflict even came close to trying to bomb the Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv? I don't think the Israelis anticipated this. This is completely outside the Israeli calculation. So everything Hezbollah is doing seems to be operating in a way that drives or pushes the point that Hezbollah is trying to make. And now Hezbollah is saying, listen, you want to talk peace or ceasefire? We're happy to talk. But we can only talk if Gaza is included. If you want to talk about a ceasefire in Lebanon that delink us from Gaza, we're not ready for that. You want to talk about ending the war in Gaza, we are happy to do it. And by the way, this is the same message of the Yemenis, Ansarullah, the same message of the Iraqis, everybody's message in the Middle East. And this is what Netanyahu is running away from. This is his nightmare scenario. I think eventually it's either he's going to drive into total madness and worsen his you know chances even further, or become a little bit more realistic, maybe with a little bit of pressure from the Israelis themselves, and say, you know what, if I'm going to end, and some Israeli generals have already said that, if you want to end this escalation in the north, you have to sort out the situation in the south.
Yeah, that is a great point. And I appreciate the explanation there because I know that there are some people, as you were noting, right? People who are wanting Hezbollah to just go all out, attack Israel. I'm sure they're probably in that place of going, hey, Israel has nukes. We don't want to mess with that part of it, at least not yet. But yeah, the kind of balancing act of responding, retaliating, yes, versus not falling into that trap that Israel is trying so hard to set up for them. And speaking of Netanyahu, I know he released this video in English, notably recently, where he was calling on the people of Lebanon to rise up against Hezbollah, insisting that, quote, our war is not with you. I want to get your take on that because I've talked to, I would say, a good number of people from Lebanon, and not all of them are necessarily the biggest fans of Hezbollah, sure, but not a single one of them was a fan of Israel, to put it lightly. So, this claim that, oh, the people of Lebanon need to rise up, not against the aggressor who is carrying out these terror attacks and targeting civilians, but against Hezbollah. How do you see Netanyahu's message, and how do you see the increase unity in Lebanon as a result of these attacks?
Rachel, I'm going to go back to your original question about, is Israel stupid enough to do so? In this particular area, yes, they are very stupid. Because, I always say that racists are their worst enemy, because they basically turn off the part of the brain that allows you to see what you perceive to be your enemy as a human being, intelligent, able to develop their own political agency, able to adapt, make decisions, and that sort of thing. They have this racist idea about the Arabs, Arabs are, Arab countries by nature are unstable societies. They overthrow, they assassinate, they do this, they do that. So maybe if I just throw enough flyers over Lebanon telling them, abandon Hezbollah, and that's the only way for you to survive, they are going to go and march in their masses to Hezbollah headquarters, as if they have any, and just overthrow the Hezbollah regime. Well, they've tried that with Hamas. They've tried that. Oh my gosh, they have tried this in Gaza in ways that are in. They tried to go through the tribes. They tried to bring their own infiltrators and spies from the Palestinian Authority. They tried to work through the manipulation of the humanitarian aid and over messages. Abandon Sinwar, abandon this, abandon that. Nobody abandoned anybody. Now, this is not going to work in Lebanon for two reasons. Number one, there is a historical experience. I mean, the Lebanese, Muslims, Christians, Shia, Sunnis in the north or in the south, they have seen what Israeli interventions actually mean for them. Total destruction either way. Like, for example, in 1982, when Israel invaded Lebanon, forcing the PLO and Palestinian fighters out of the country, and they made promises that everybody is going to be safe. when this is over. And the Americans, with the leadership of Philip Habib at the time, came and said, yes, we are the guarantor of the safety of the Lebanese people. What did they do? They carried out Sabra and Shatila and other massacres, and they butchered thousands of Palestinians and Lebanese. That's after the war was over, and after the PLO was driven out, and after the Syrian forces were driven out. So the Lebanese know that there can never be safety or stability or anything of that sort with any Israeli presence. Now, South Lebanon in particular is different because you have a culture there that is so deeply rooted. And again, I mentioned my visits to South Lebanon and my time in the Dahiya and speaking to people. I mean, this is not something like Hezbollah is some sort of a separate entity that exists outside the realms of Lebanese society. Every part of South Lebanon somehow has some sort of connection to Hezbollah, from the charities to the orphanage to the media, to the schools, to the universities, to the banks. Hezbollah banks were the only ones that actually had liquidity when the financial crisis of Lebanon took place a couple of years ago, and people could not get any money out of their ATM. So it's an economic entity, and more important, it is part of the Lebanese government. And even more important, it's an essential part in the Lebanese government. So you're not talking about some random militia. And this is what why the Israelis are being stupid, is that they haven't updated their information. And their understanding of Arab culture is only an understanding of how do we use that culture to exploit it. Like, for example, the rape of women in Gaza and men, unfortunately, in Gaza. It's part of that understanding that, Arab societies value the concept of honor. So by dishonoring their men and women, we break their spirit and then they are going to surrender. But it's a very Orientalist, a very racist view of how Arab and Palestinian societies function. It is someone who is operating through manuals, racist manuals somewhere else. He doesn't really understand how Gaza functions, and they don't know how Lebanon functions. No, you're not going to be seeing anyone driving the Hezbollah fighters out of their neighborhoods anytime soon. To the contrary, Hezbollah is the most entrenched political group, kind of a militia army in Lebanon, and actually it's a source of stability in South Lebanon, the kind of stability that the Lebanese haven't enjoyed since the civil war in the mid 1970s. So no, that's just not going to work, and there will be no breakdown of Lebanese society, whether they support Hezbollah or don't support Hezbollah.
Yeah, I think it's very telling, exactly as you were saying there. It's like Netanyahu isn't even really speaking to the Lebanese audience, and I think he knows that. Instead, he's speaking to the West, right? He's speaking in English very clearly, and he's playing this part of acting like, oh, Hezbollah is just this small isolated group because that's what he wants the West to keep thinking. He doesn't want the people there to wake up and to learn anything about Lebanon or about Palestine or any of these places in the region that Israel is now openly targeting, because as we've seen, it is not just the Palestinians. These are, these tactics of targeting civilians are ones that Israel has used openly for many years. Certainly a lot at stake here all around. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Dr. Ramzy Baroud, a Palestinian-American journalist, author, and editor of the Palestine Chronicle. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. If you want to support my work, you can also check out my page on Patreon. That's where you can sign up as a monthly paid subscriber and join the community there. You can also check out my new series called Sanctioned, which is exclusively for paid subscribers. And we've got a new episode coming out tomorrow that you don't want to miss. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.